Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Stargirl. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, we had that intro, which I thought was kind of interesting because it's like the movie's thing is called Strange Adventures, which I'm like, okay, little wink and nod to DC stuff, because if I'm not mistaken, that's connected to Adam Strange. Which I also think is kind of interesting in the DC grand scheme of things, because Adam Strange has actually made a live action appearance being in Krypton. Once again, that's a whole tangent in itself. But regardless, like, if I'm not mistaken, that's actually the name of a set of comic books, because I think HBO Max is supposed to be adapting that, or at least doing something under that title of like Strange Adventures. Like I said, I think there's a comic book run specifically titled that, but I know there's supposed to be like an anthology superhero thing based around that too. Supposedly, this was like months ago before HBO Max. Regardless, tangents again. I just thought, I was like, oh, I recognize that. But then immediately, it's actually kind of sweet, the whole situation of Pat and Barbara, how them actually kind of, meeting, over a, banana split. I thought that was kind of cute. But then, like, cut to present day, and things aren't that sweet because things get complicated, because like obviously Courtney's still trying to lie about the staff, but then like Pat's like, no, we got to tell her the truth, and apparently they lay it all out, and it's like, oh, so you're trying to find Jordan's this Iceman, Icicle, he killed my dad who was Starman. She's like, your dad wasn't Starman. So once again, that's what I kept bringing up each time, because I was like, that's where I was, because like Pat was so sure of it, but like she's the one that was kind of the most like pushing for it. But now it's a thing of like, it turned into what I figured it was going to, because it's like Barbara's going to be rightfully so pissed, because it's like, wait, so for like the past, like our entire relationship is based on a lie. He's like, no, like what we have is real. But for her, it's like, the fact of the matter is, do I really know anything? The whole Stripe C thing, it's like, well, he goes by Stripe now. She's like, you go by Stripe. He's like, sometimes. It's more so the name everyone else gives him, but it's like, she's obviously upset with Courtney, like, just go, because she's blaming Pat, because it's like, oh, you're filling her head with all of this stuff. Because I even love Pat. She's like, I'm a superhero, and Pat, whoa. He's like, you should, don't lead with that. Don't lead with that. And it's like, yeah, that's the thing you don't lead with, because you want to probably build up to the whole you being a superhero thing, because being a superhero means you get, hurt and stuff like that. Which obviously she's like, that car accident, was that from an actual car accident, or did, how did Courtney get hurt? And he was like, he had told her the truth. It wasn't from a car accident. And for her, it's like, now it's a thing of me recognizing, like, the fact of the matter is my daughter's in danger because you brought this into our lives. For him, it's like, I never wanted this. He was like, he wanted to leave this in the past, but it ended up finding its way to him. The argument could be, well, you kept all that, Justice Society stuff. You even kept the staff. I mean, to be fair, that's what Starman asked him to do, like keep the staff long enough until it passes on to someone else. So that's what he was always doing. He never in his wildest dreams would it have been like, oh, my stepdaughter would end up becoming, the next star person, So it's like, of course, that would never correlate to him, but it's just like, she's asking him to leave. And obviously, like, Pat is going to go stay at the garage. And I thought it was kind of sweet. Mike was like, no, I'm your son, so I'll go with him. He's like, I don't say this enough, Mike, but and he's like, yeah, just don't get too sappy, big guy. And keep going upstairs. He's like, I love you. It's just like, it was like a really heartwarming thing. The fact of the matter is, And obviously, it's just that complicated thing of like, you can understand why Barbara is pissed. I mean, literally in a span of, hours, your entire world turns upside down, because now you're like, my daughter's out being a superhero and it could get her killed, plus my boss is potentially a supervillain who's killed people too, and it's like, what's real, what's not? That's kind of the biggest thing for her. She doesn't know, because she says it was certainty that Starman wasn't Courtney's dad. She says it with such certainty, but even she's not apparently 100% sure, I think. So that in itself brings up like 1,000 questions, especially later on, because we see, because it like, things get complicated on a mass level, because Brainwave's awake. It's like, oh my God, wait, he doesn't remember the last 10 years. So it's like, oh, he's kind of almost a little bit revamped because he's a better person. To be fair, we kind of already saw that he, like, even before losing his memories, we know how much of a person he was, what kind of person he was, because we got his backstory last episode about, like, how, like, the fact there's no videotapes of him, like, seeing the evil in people. So being a part of the Injustice Society didn't change him. It probably just amplified what was already there. The fact of the matter is, he just thought people were beyond saving, that people were monsters, people were terrible, and the fact of the matter is, he's part of this whole plan and everything. But obviously, it's like, oh, like because Henry's enjoying this because it's like, oh my God, I got my dad and he's a better person. Because obviously, it's like, oh, this is my dad. Like right after he lost my mom, it's like my mom helped make him a because the moment it came up about like his mom being like, oh, the woman of 1,000 gimmicks and stuff like that, because he's like, oh, I met her when I was robbing a bank, which I'm like, oh man, that's so like super like bad. That's bad guy 101 robbing a bank. I thought that was so interesting. But I was like, the moment he called her like the lady of 1,000 gimmicks, I was like, was she a superhero or something? Is that what that, like they never expressly say that, but part of me was like, was she a superhero? Was that what that is? Especially because we find out like, oh, she's Starman's sister. I was like, oh shit. So it was like, which in turn, you could make the argument, like, still flip-flopping about whether or not Starman was actually Courtney's dad or not, but it's like, that made her and Henry cousins, which is so interesting and complicated, which I thought that'd be interesting if that ended up being the case, simply because I'm like, oh, all these cousins all around, like, you got Clark and Kara, Superman and Supergirl, and you got, you know, Bruce and Kate, Batman and Batwoman, so it's so interesting. I mean, hell, even if you cross the boundaries of, over to Marvel, that happens because I'm blanking on her real name. Is it Jennifer? I don't remember. Bruce Banner's cousin, she becomes She-Hulk, so it's that same parallel too. So it's like, oh, the cousins thing is so interesting. So it just would have been interesting, just even on just a DC front, knowing like those cousin relationships that are already out there. I'm sure these are just the ones I know from live action and stuff like that. I'm sure there's even more, like if you dive deep into like the history of comic books of all the superhero cousins. Regardless, I just thought that was such a neat little exchange and situation of like, if that's the case. What I thought was really interesting though is when Jordan came to visit Brainwave and the staff came to attack him. I was like, oh shit. Because I think it's interesting because I think the staff doesn't necessarily want justice. I think it's like Rick. I think it wants revenge because it's been with, you know, like Starman like a lot of his life. Not probably a good chunk of it. Probably not, definitely not all of it, but a good chunk of his. So like you build that partnership, that kinship with someone. It's like we're partners, you know. Because who he belonged to prior to that, like I said, there's the whole, which I'm assuming, well, because I was about to say, like, because there's that knight who saved her after she was attacked by Cindy. He was, like, daydreaming, like, he had the broom in his hands, and or mop or whatever, and it turned into the cosmic staff. So that's what I was like, is that it? So I'm thinking that basically, that's what I was thinking before, like, maybe that knight is the one who passed the torch on to Sylvester, like maybe because obviously that staff existed before Sylvester had it. So I'm thinking like before he became Starman, like someone else bequeathed it to him or someone, whoever that janitor is. I think he lost it. I think he might have been like the OG Starman or whatever. But then it seems like he's part of that group or whatever because he's like he recognizes him as Stripey. But then I'm like, so it gets me confused because I'm like, it can't actually be Starman because Starman looked different, and that's what I kept bringing up. So not unless the janitor is actually Courtney's actual dad, but then you get that whole email thing at the end. Like, there's so much that I'm like, I don't know, because so what is his connection to the staff if it seems like he belonged to that same group that Pat did? You know, the group that Pat was a part of before he joined the JSA. So many damn questions, and I'm all over the place, and I do apologize. It's just like my brain is on fire just trying to piece this all together. But obviously the staff was kind of outmatched because it doesn't have, like, you know, obviously it can't bring out its full potential. It's literally fighting alone. So you're literally going up against two people, Brainwave and Icicle, and Icicle just freezes it. And it's just like, who made you? Where did you come from? And so it's kind of like a little bit of a trophy. Now there's all of that, like, you know, Courtney went to tell Pat about her mom, you know, going to work, and it's like, pack yourself, we're leaving Blue Valley, which Pat, it's like, fine, like, me and her may not be in the best relationship, but the fact of the matter is, if it means keeping you and her safe, then I'll sacrifice my, you know, our relationship if it means both of you being safe and leaving Blue Valley. And Mike asking the questions, and, you know, obviously, you know, Courtney can't tell him anything. She doesn't want to tell him anything because it's like already seeing everything implode. But he's like, brothers and sisters, they tell each other stuff. It's just like, I can't because, and he's like, oh, because you're not actually my sister. He's like, I got it. So it's just like, it's sad because it's just like she doesn't want to bring him into the fold of all of this. I think eventually they're probably going to end up telling him the truth. Maybe, I don't know, they might try to avoid in general because I think it's going to be a little messed up if he's literally the only person in the family who doesn't know the truth about what's going on. it's sad because like her family is kind of falling apart. Like it took a while because yeah, she didn't really think of Mike probably too much as a brother, didn't think too much of Pat as like her dad, but now it's like things have changed. Like this whole thing has brought her and Mike closer, has brought her and Pat closer. Hell, even Mike and Barbara have gotten closer over the course of everything. So for her, it's like her watching her family fall apart. She wants to do whatever she can. So she's like, if she can stop, the ISA, then maybe she can, save her family in the long term, everything between Pat and Barbara. Obviously, Henry tracks her down and tells her, like, hey, Jordan, he killed my mom, and he's also got your staff, so we need to stop him, but they can't do it alone. So they bring in the rest of the team, and it's like, oh, great. So now he knows the rest of our identities, too. Obviously, Yolanda is the one the most against this, even going as far as saying, you ended up choosing Henry over me, so we're not friends anymore, because I even love Beth because he's like, I won't use my powers on you, and Beth is like, see, that's considerate, and Yolanda just kind of looks at her like, what? So obviously it turns into a little scuffle between Rick and Henry, and I thought it was so interesting when Beth was like, just ignore us like you always do, to like anyone else that's watching. So it is a thing of like these potential enemies having to join forces to stop, the lesser of two evils. Obviously in Yolanda's mind it's not, but understandably so. So they end up going into the tunnels to try and stop all this. At the same time, Barbara is looking up this whole Starman thing. She ends up emailing Courtney's dad, which she does get a reply, which begs the question like, but that's the thing, like, Courtney was like 5 years old when her dad left, so, but she has pictures of him. That's why I'm like, so is it just that he happens to look like Starman? Like, dude, are they like, is it like a twin situation going on there or what? Like, because that also begs the question, like, who is her dad? Like, who is he? And, this whole mystery behind, like, if Sam is really her dad or is there actually more? Because I feel like if she, like, I'm not trying to like judge or anything. Like I feel like Barbara would come up like now and admit like if she was like if there were circumstances of be like, oh, that Sam isn't your dad, that he isn't who But like the thing is, even she wasn't sure. But like looking at the pictures, like some of the pictures of Starman or like there are photos that were kind of like his face is concealed and stuff like that. So it's like I said, even she's not 100% sure. But the fact is that she's sure enough to reach out to Sam to see like, oh, but she got an email, so he is still alive. So it's not that Starman, or at least the Starman that Pat knew as Sylvester can't be Courtney's dad, because that's also the thing. Because like Courtney's been under the impression like that has to be her dad just because of the way he looks, but also like the fact is I can wield the staff, but it's like no, it could be just the qualities that you hold as a person is why the staff chose you. Or maybe the argument could be the staff knew what was going down in Blue Valley and it needed someone that could fit the bill. I'm about to do my Kingdom Hearts thing. Spoilers for Kingdom Hearts 1. Kind of how, like, Sora only got the Keyblade because Riku had kind of given himself to darkness, and as Riku says, you were just the delivery boy. Like, kind of saying, like, she's not the real inheritor of the next star person, that it actually is supposed to be someone else, but she's kind of the intermediate star person, Like I said, that's kind of it's just a weird theory I'm just randomly throwing out there that it just made me think of that with everything going on. Once again, this could heavily be proven wrong, but like I said, just a wild theory I'm currently throwing out there. Maybe it's like, oh, eventually the staff finds a person who's supposed to be the rightful person, but then eventually, it stays with Courtney because it's like, despite everything, she's shown through her actions and her heart and her courage that she's the right person, that she is supposed to be. She is, regardless of whether she was always meant to be, the fact of the matter is that she represents what this, the staff looks for in it. Like I said, just currently throwing that out there. And once again, using an excuse to make any comparisons or bring up Kingdom Hearts, that's part of my thing. Just have to do that. But regardless. It was interesting, that whole scene between Pat and Barbara. It's like, oh yeah, here's Jordan, here's his family. It's like, oh man, this is weird and awkward, especially now that he's a killer and a supervillain. But it turns out Barbara had actually recorded their conversation. And for her, it's like, well, I needed to get the truth from a trustworthy source, so I couldn't trust anyone else, so I had to get the information myself. But he's like, no. Pat's like, no, I just thought it was kind of, smart. He's like, I would have never thought to, do that, record the conversation to find out what they're talking about. But it's like, obviously it's like the conversation about like, oh, Jordan likes her a little bit, you can understand why, but the fact of the matter is it won't matter as much when the machine's turned on. It's like, now what the hell is that about? Obviously, like Pat and the others are still in the dark about what it is that the JSA is a part of. We get a better idea because even Jordan kind of outright explains it to Henry, being like, oh yeah, like with the machine and your powers will have control at the heart of America. Then you have, Courtney, Yolanda, Rick, Henry, and Beth all going, the underground tunnels and stuff like that. And obviously, at least, them having to separate, which obviously everyone's like, no, we're not going to let you go anywhere alone with Henry. So Yolanda goes with them, and they're kind of splitting up, and that causes complications on their own because, like, Rick and Beth run into Solomon Grundy, and Rick takes it upon himself. He's about to literally rip the door open, and it's like, Beth is like, this isn't what we're here for, but for him, it's like, plans change. It's like, the thing that killed my family is, I mean, to be fair, Solomon Grundy's actually hard to kill, isn't he? If I'm not mistaken. Once again, I'm not well versed in Solomon Grundy. Like I said, I remember a little bit, like kind of like the tragic story he ends up having in Justice League, where he actually kind of became a good guy for a little bit. That, and once again Gotham. But to my, like, I don't know, like he's technically a zombie. Once again, I can't remember if it's like science fiction that brings him back to life or is it straight up like magic. But he's like a zombie, so I don't think he's gonna be that easy to kill. Plus, like, Solomon Grundy is like stupid strong because he can go toe to toe with Superman, can he? I don't know if he's necessarily on like the same level as like a God, what am I thinking of? I don't think it's like doomsday levels, but I think, Solomon Grundy definitely has like superhuman strength. So I think even Rick with his hour worth of strength still, it wouldn't be an easy, it'd be a pretty uphill battle, I think. Like I said, I could be mistaken. Because I think Solomon Grundy goes toe to toe with like Wonder Woman and stuff like that too, So once again, my limited knowledge and stuff like that. But regardless. So the fact of the matter is Rick is kind of doing something stupid because he's letting his vengeance get the best of it, which you can make the argument. Once again, the staff and Rick are kind of that same mind because didn't wait for Courtney. It was just like, no, I need my revenge. We now know who Icicle is, and we don't need to like, because now it's like, oh, Jordan is Icicle, and the staff looks and it's like, oh, so this is Icicle, the same. So I met Jordan, so I know who Jordan is. The fact of the matter is, I know where Icicle is. I'm gonna get my revenge. Once again, justice maybe in its mind, but I think it's leaning a little more vengeance than justice. But But obviously Henry ends up trying to apologize to Yolanda. That's what I kept thinking, like maybe he wasn't as involved with everything as he was, but it turns out in actuality he was, because he never said like, oh, someone. It's like I guess for him he had his own part to play in it, and the way he's kind of treated Yolanda afterwards, kind of, that's why I was wondering why he was such a dick afterwards, because it didn't seem like he wanted things to go that way, but things blew up that way, and I guess he didn't do anything to mediate the situation, so he was just as much at fault. Because I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure he passed it around to other people. He was showing it to other people, and like I said, I think Cindy's the one that kind of blasted it all over the place. But still, or at the very least, maybe Cindy's the one that sent it to Yolanda to let her know, oh, like this is what everyone's looking at. Maybe I don't know. Whatever the case may be, like Yolanda's like, because he was like, I wish you could see what's inside of my head so you know how sorry I am. She's like, well, it doesn't matter. She's not going to forgive him. So, but when the time comes, like they cross paths with Ito, because I love that Cindy's in this house. She's like, she's here, Dad. Come on, let me out of here. Let me be the one to kill her. But the fact of the matter is, like, it's actually pretty dope. Yolanda, like, slicing and dicing, like, showing also, like, Courtney doesn't need the staff to be a badass. She's got a spear, and she kicks major ass. I mean, to be fair, a lot of what the staff does, like, is, like, a lot of her own maneuvering, but obviously, like, the staff is able to do the whole, like, fighting with its own thing, and she can, like, lend her own skills to that. But she was handing her, I was like, holy shit, look at her kicking ass. So you can't say it's just a staff. It's like, without, it's one of those superhero moments of, like, it's almost like a Batman moment. Like, I don't need superpowers to kick ass, and then like Henry kind of using his telekinesis and shit was like pretty badass, like this trio. And then it's like I love that, like, what was it, Dr. Ito comes over to her and she's like, I think she said Snapdragon, he's like Dragon King Watch. I was like, man, that's mad disrespectful. But then obviously we got that look underneath his hood, because like Yolanda had like freed the staff and everything. And I thought it was pretty dope that it's like his face gets revealed, obviously the whole dragon thing, and he roars. They both get scared, and Courtney blasts him, and it's like, oh, that was interesting. But obviously Henry goes over to his dad. He's like, "Oh, Dad, oh, come on, let's get you out of here." And it's like, oh, his dad's already got all his memories back. He's like, they turned. He's like, "No, this is who I've always been, son." And Henry just, because for a second he thought, oh, maybe I could get the good version of my dad, that version of my dad that my mom believed in. But he ends up running with the others, and everyone meets up, and they're trying to get out. But Brainwave tracks them down, and he's blocking their passage. So Henry ends up fending him off because he's blocking the blast from the cosmic staff. And it's like Henry kind of gives some hands, uses his powers to like rip open the bars more too, and he like telekinetically moves Courtney through there, and he ends up closing the bars back, and he's the one there, and he's trying to plead with his dad. It's like, I get it, like the fact of the matter is, you're not the, like, I see you the way Mom does. Like, the fact of the matter is, it's like, I get it, but Jordan killed Mom. And, because for him, it's like, because he had said it in the tapes, he was like, oh, the fact of the matter is, Jordan, because for him, it's like his wife, all she had were good thoughts. And for him, it's like Jordan ruined all that. But the moment those tapes went down, I was like, I had a feeling from the beginning, I was like, Jordan didn't kill your mom, he did. It had to be, Brainwave, and he admits it. Because for him, because why he blames Jordan is because the moment Jordan killed her brother, it set her off. So now all those wonderful thoughts she had obviously became probably more about like he never, that what he was perceived as his sanctuary was no longer his sanctuary. So he had to basically choose between the JSA and her, and obviously the ISA and her, and he chose the ISA. And like the moment it was revealed, like, oh, his mom like drowned or whatever, I was like, did he kill her? I was like, it just seemed a little weird that it's just like, oh, that's why I was just kind of like, I don't know. Then him being the one that ends up, oh, I'm gonna tell you what happened to your mom. Like, that's why I was just kind of like, I didn't know. But it's a sad situation because the moment Henry finds that out, though, because he's like, son, you should join with me. If you don't join with me, then basically you're gonna make me, don't put me in that situation where I'm gonna have to choose over again, because if it comes down to it, I will choose basically ISA, this mission above you. And I mean, once again, it kind of shows you like how willing they're going to, like, because obviously like the whole thing with Icicle killing Joey and his dad, but at the same time it is a whole thing of like, that's one thing because that's someone else's kid and someone else, so it's like it's different from it being your own kid. So him threatening to do that, I mean, to be fair, he was willing to kill his own wife, but it's like, think of like, oh, this is above, this is more important. But he's also like, come on, son, you can be like me. But he chose not to be. He's like, I'm gonna be better than you. So he ends up using his powers to kind of upheaval the ground a little bit, like a little bit of rubble, and he throws that at his dad, but his dad's stronger than him and blows it all back and throws him against the bars. And it's like the roof of the tunnel is starting to like crumble because that's what he's doing. And he looks at Yolanda and he's like, I am sorry. And it's just kind of like, because all of them were trying to break through to get to him, but the fact is that Brainwave was stopping them. And he's even saying, like, telling Courtney, he's like, you were right, not everyone is bad, not everyone's a monster. He's like, don't let this change that in you. Don't, like, basically don't lose that part of yourself that you, just because of what's about to happen now, don't let this change that part of you. So it was like very heartbreaking to see the situation play out that way, for the entire like tunnel to collapse on him like that. I was like, oh shit. Like, the fact of the matter is, and that's so sad because like obviously like the way they were setting his story up, that's so tragic for things to end that way, like for his own dad to be the one that murdered him. And it's like, especially for Yolanda, that makes her feel conflicted because obviously she was threatening him and stuff like that. She probably thought on more occasions that she wanted him dead, but it's like to see that he was trying to make up for things, that he was sorry, because he even said like if he could, he wished he could go back and change things, but he couldn't. So, and at the end, despite everything, he was a good guy, nothing like his dad, because his dad kept being like, oh, you're like me. So there's still the possibility of there could be something with that, like either he didn't die and Dr. Ito has something to do with resurrecting him, but now he's back and he's a bad guy, like that I wouldn't see that being too far away. But I mean, maybe he is just straight up gone. Like, I just get the feeling like they might use this as an excuse to bring him back and kind of have him brainwashed or something. That could be where they go, but like that was a downer of a way to end the episode. It's like, holy shit, that was a bummer. That's just super depressing. I'm curious to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.